Wayne Thiebaud is an American artist best known for his paintings of common objects that we would all recognize. He is known as a pop artist because pop art often used common objects or recognizable things from pop culture, and they would use bright, bold colors. Thiebaud often used bright colors and a lot of contrast with light and shadow in his paintings. Today we are going to make 3 drawings of desserts, and we're going to color them in using bright, bold colors with a lot of contrast. Now I have instructions in Google Classroom on how you can draw some of these different desserts if you'd like to do that. Or if you have a different dessert or a different way of drawing a dessert, you can do that too. Just make sure that your dessert takes up most of your paper. When you're ready to color in, think about where your light source is going to be. That's why I have that sticky note up in the corner with the sun on it. Then I can remember that that's where all of my light is coming from. I'm going to shade in, keeping in mind where the light would hit everything on my dessert here. So for the cherry, since it's a sphere, I colored it in the same way that I would color in a sphere, making sure that the darkest part is farther away from the light source and lightening up as I get closer. Now we want to have a lot of contrast in our artwork, so we are going to layer some colors together. One way to darken up an area is to use the complementary color of the color that you put down. So my cherry is red, and now I'm layering the complement of red, green in the dark areas. This looks a lot more natural than if we were to use just a black on top. If it starts to get a little bit too green looking, I'm going to go back to that red and layer that on top. You're going to want to go back and forth a lot with this project so that our colors can look bright and bold. For the frosting, I'm going to lightly draw out where I think that shadow is going to be, and then push really, really hard in that area to make it really, really dark. Now I don't want to have a really harsh shadow, so I want to blend that out as much as I can. I shouldn't be able to tell where one pressure starts and one pressure ends. We want it to look like a nice, smooth gradient. Now I wanted to make this blue color look a little bit more bright and interesting, so I decided to grab a green and layer it right on top. Colors that are going to look really nice layered together are going to be right next to each other on the color wheel. So you can think about that whenever you're putting down a color and you're thinking it's looking kind of flat or kind of boring, and you want to make it look a little bit more bright and interesting. I think that the main color that pops out the most in the frosting is blue. So I'm taking the complement of blue, which is orange, to layer on top of the shadow on my cupcake. Remember, if it starts looking a little bit too orange, just go back to that blue and layer it on top. For the cake area, I decided to layer down brown with yellow on top of it. Then to darken up the shadow of my cake part, I grabbed the complement of yellow, which is purple, and deepened up the shadow area with that color. Now for the paper part of our cupcake, I want to make it look like it's going in and out like the paper of a cupcake would usually go. I don't want it to look really, really flat. So I'm starting by making the lines that I drew down for the paper really, really dark. And I'm going to want to draw a gradient that goes out from each of these lines. I also want to make sure that the part of the paper that's farthest away from the light source is really, really dark too. So for these areas, I'm going to have a lot of gradients. And I'm also going to use the complement of purple, yellow, to really darken these areas too. I decided that my purple looked a little bit boring, so I decided to layer some red right on top of it to make it look brighter and more interesting. When I'm done with my entire dessert, I'm going to draw a shadow. And my shadow is going to go off of the page. I'm going to start by very lightly drawing where I think my shadow is going to go. Then remember, it's going to be darkest right next to your dessert. Then you're going to blend out. Make sure there isn't any harsh lines on your shadow. There should be a nice gradient going from that black all the way to the white of your paper. If you need to go back and just grab an eraser to kind of lighten up those areas, you can do that too. Now, to make this shadow look a little bit more interesting and less just like a gray blob, I layered some blue right on top of it. And the very last thing that you need to do is add a horizon line in the background. That way our cupcake isn't just floating.